The podcast you're about to listen to may contain random lines from musical theater, terrible attempts at regional accents, and a sincere discussion about mental health. You have been warned. Are you ready to start singing with your feet? Formidable! Allez, c'est parti! Non, nous ne sommes pas fous, nous ne sommes pas ivres, nous sommes juste dans la joie. Une joie profonde, nos cœurs elle inonde. Cette joie, elle vient du ciel, non, nous ne sommes pas fous.
Welcome to Sing With Your Feet, the podcast in which we come to grips with the fact that our days are numbered. The podcast in which we face the fact that our legacy is in our hands and that how we use those days really does matter. The podcast in which we become the hero of our life story by the decisions we make. My name is Lily Fields, and I'm going to be your fairy godmother for the next half hour or so. Your wicked stepsister, Liella Kelly, is here too. We have one topic on our minds today, and that topic is legacy. A legacy, according to a definition, is an amount of money left in a will. We aren't talking about that kind of legacy in this episode. We are talking about the intangible kind of legacy that people leave after they die. We all know of people whose death was a real blow. I'm thinking of recently somebody like the fabulous Betty White. She left a legacy of smiles, of laughs, of hours and hours of joy to many people, me included. But more than that, let's be honest, ladies, Betty White left us a legacy of what it would look like to age well. We can all only hope to die old and gorgeous and funny as she was. We're talking about that kind of legacy today. I'm going to say this up front. As your fairy godmother, I have one very, very, very important wish for you. I want you to leave a sparkling legacy. You may not have the same reach as Betty White or the same number of full years that she did, but I want you to live your years to the fullest, just like Betty did. But Lily, oh, that's you. You sound like a Southern belle, and if it bothers you, then just wait until the philosopher princess shows up a little later in the podcast. Lily, I don't like to think about how my days are numbered. Oh, I believe you. No one likes to think about the fact that we are mortal. But if we want to make the most out of our life, we must accept that the days and hours are limited, and that we don't know how many of them there will be. I want you to make the most out of your life. And even if you are on the fence about this, I want it for you. You see, I believe in you. Since the early episodes of this podcast, I have been making the argument that you are someone extraordinary, someone uniquely gifted for a specific purpose on this planet. You are a hero. Do you remember this? If not, I want you to go back to listen to the first 3 episodes of the podcast and then come back and listen. Because you are a hero. You are a hero with exactly 3 things going for you. Your time, your talent, and your treasure. How you choose to use those 3 resources is going to determine the life you live. My hope is that, with the homework we've been doing together over the last 13 episodes, to start taking your well-being as seriously as you might the well-being of someone that you really want to impress. Yeah, that by treating yourself as an honored guest in your home, that you will have rediscovered some of your talents and your treasures. On this podcast, you have a wicked stepsister whose name is Liella, and Liella is a death doula. She has reminded you that we're all going to die one day. And from her perspective, she told us that as people near death, they often regret not having lived according to their values. So, we talked about ways to determine what our values are and how we can start living in such a way as to live according to our values so that we don't have to face deathbed regrets. The truth is that our time is limited. We just simply don't know how long we have. Whereas we might know what kind of talent we have or how much treasure we have, maybe even down to the penny, we have absolutely no way of knowing how many minutes we have left. And this can be scary when we stop to think about it. Paradoxically, it's very, very easy to lose sight of as we go through the everyday drudgery of life. Perhaps I should take a moment right now to remind you that some of the things that we talk about here on this podcast can dislodge feelings, specifically when we talk about death and dying. One-on-one professional mental health support is a critical part to finding peace with your past, forgiving yourself, and moving on to a new season of your life. If you need professional help, please do not wait to get it. Understood? Good girl. Without getting too spiritual about the whole thing, I believe that the stories of our lives were written before they ever began, and that they are stories for good, for the good of those that we love, and for the good of those who live in this world with us. Now, remember, I am married to a philosopher, so I am not ignorant of all the high-minded, well-reasoned arguments to the contrary of everything I just said. But this is what I've chosen to believe in my life, because honestly, it's the only way that I can live with any sense of purpose. If you believe something else, I respect that, but please don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I don't have answers to the big philosophical questions like, if God exists, why is there so much evil in the world? Or why do bad things happen to good people? I wish I had answers to those. All that I know is that when I seek to live according to the original plan for my life, keeping in mind that I don't know exactly what this looks like, but when I try to live in a way that puts faith and hope and love in the driver's seat of my life, I ultimately feel more peace. Rather than bemoaning my lot in life because it's not turning out how I would like, I can believe that my current circumstances contain lessons for me to learn. I can hope that these lessons might provide some insight into that ultimate plan, or if it doesn't, at least it might help me understand the thoughts of the one who created me and wrote that plan. A lot of those lessons are simply that I need to let go of my need to control everything, that I am insignificant and tiny, and my impact is very small. Those are really important lessons to learn when we, and by me I mean I, tend to be a prideful person. Each time I capitulate and accept the circumstances of my life that I cannot change, it brings me into harmony with that original plan for my life. As I actively consent to where I am now, I can bring myself closer to the original path, the one that I became distanced from through my lack of virtue, my unhappiness, my moodiness, my pride, and all my other character flaws. Again, if you're looking for some philosophical discussion on free will and predestination, you're not going to get it from me. I am not smart enough to understand all those arguments. I am only smart enough to understand how to live according to what I believe to be true. That is why consenting to where I am now was the first step in my ideal life exercise. There are things that cannot be undone. There are illnesses that cannot be healed. There are relationships that cannot be reconciled. There are years wasted that we cannot unwaste. There are words once said that cannot be unsaid. Facing those, forgiving myself for those, and accepting that this is where I'm starting from, then I can start to build again. I can build a new life with tools that were already in my possession. In episode 3, entitled On Heaven and Dinosaur Poop, I shared with you what I like to imagine an arrival in heaven might be like. As a matter of fact, this little episode is important enough to me that I am going to play just that part of it again for you here, so you don't have to go back and hunt through the episode and look for it. Are you ready? Let's go. I like to imagine heaven. Sometimes it looks like the costuming department at a well-endowed opera company. Sometimes it's like being at a music festival where big names like King David and Mozart and Elvis are headlining. There is never a line for the bathroom and nobody's drunk. It's fabulous. I also imagine heaven like being at an airport. Me? I'm just sitting there on my suitcase, minding my own business, waiting for my flight, reading my copy of the National Enquirer, just like my Gigi used to do, while I'm reading about Bigfoot's secret lumberjack love slave and the man who fries eggs on his bald head. A crowd gathers nearby. There are whispers, a flutter of excitement while a well-dressed Secret Service contingent sweeps the concourse. Then, the first members of an entourage surrounding someone very, very important. There's intense agitation. Then a man enters my line of sight. He's the one everybody's whispering about. He's well-dressed, wearing a chic all-black ensemble, and is walking briskly with purpose, but still takes time to greet all the crowds that have gathered. Me, even in my Heaven fanfiction, remain distant and pretend I'm not intrigued, all the while secretly dying inside to stare. With a gesture, he indicates to his entourage that he wants to stop their progress towards his gate. He slows down as he passes me. My heart stops. He lowers his sunglasses and he smiles at me. I know, he's smiling at me. And he asks me out for coffee. I order a chai with whipped cream. He pays in cash, in case you were wondering. As we sit down at the corner booth, I finally recognize him. He's the one who gave me the gold coins. He wants to talk about what I've done with the gold bags he's given me. All right, it's me again, current day Lily. Did you enjoy that trip down memory lane? If you haven't heard all of episode 3, you should listen to it. In it, I go on to talk at length about dinosaur poop, and it's kind of funny. But the point of today's episode is to start considering our answer to that question. What did you do with the gold coins that were given to you? You see, if we are willing to accept that we have those 3 resources, our time, our talent, and our treasure, and that they were given specifically to us, and specifically for a purpose, then isn't it worth it to consider how we're using them? When we arrived at our last day, and the person who entrusted those resources, or these tools for building our life, asked for an accounting of how we use them, what would we answer? As we get older, and as life gets more comfortable, as we get settled into routines and habits and relationships, it becomes difficult to feel urgency for answering how we used our time, our talent, and our treasure. Time, as it turns out, can be an insulator to living a life of purpose. Layla, your wicked stepsister, she's going to tell you a story about how with very little time, someone can make an outsized impact. Let me just warn you, you might need your Kleenex for this part. Layla, the floor is yours.
There are no happy endings. Endings are the saddest part. So give me a happy middle and a very happy start. Shel Silverstein wrote these words, 4 little lines that wrap up life start to finish. 4 little lines that can stop a person in their tracks. That's what happened to me the first time I read them. I was scrolling through Instagram. There was a picture of my friend's beautiful little blue-eyed girl, a 10-year-old who my son might someday have a crush on, or who knows, maybe even marry. A petite little thing who loved Taylor Swift and would happily sing you snippets of her songs. A girl who filled her afternoons with good-hearted mischief, playfully locking her parents out of the car until they danced to her satisfaction, or filling up water balloons to battle with her friends. And here she was on Instagram, Shel Silverstein's poem under her picture. Like I said, it stopped me in my tracks. What was this all about? My brain was not putting it together, but slowly the pieces started falling into place. This poem, this little girl. Soon, I learned that there had been an accident, and this lovely, freckle-nosed little charmer was gone. Pain gutted family and friends and swept through the community. As expected, a funeral was planned, and on a hot July day, hundreds of people gathered. We didn't know it, but we were about to get a lesson in legacy. You might think that 10 years isn't enough time to leave a legacy. And if we're sticking with the traditional financial legacy, you're right, but we're not. I'm talking about what I consider to be a much more valuable legacy, the legacy of who we are and how we make people feel, the intangible gifts that we have to offer. So, back to that hot July day. Hundreds had gathered in a city park under the big shade trees. Most of the women were wearing maxi skirts and pink nail polish, a nod to a favorite outfit that she'd been planning to wear to a special event. And girls wore colorful duct tape bows in their hair, and the boys wore them as ties. She had made them all as part of a little business plan that she had. And after a beautifully delivered eulogy, a video began to play. Pictures that had been drawn by her friends and happy photos flashed by, accompanied by the Taken by Trees version of Sweet Child of Mine. They sang the words, "She's got eyes of the bluest skies," as photos of family and friends flicked across the screen. Everybody cried. And then something amazing happened. The park transformed into a little girl's dream. There were root beer floats, silly mustaches on sticks that you could hold under your nose to joke around. There were orange gerbera daisies, sushi, limonadas, cupcakes, Baby Bell cheese, orange and white Japanese lanterns hanging from the trees. Excited chatter filled the air as children scrambled for treats and played on the grass. Framed poems by Shel Silverstein dotted the park. Everywhere you looked, her legacy was there. Her joyful personality, her favorite foods, silliness, pink fingernail polish, love, happiness, friendship, it was oozing all over the park. It oozed right into my heart and the hearts of everybody there. Her legacy became a part of us. Later, I would learn that all of those beautiful things had been donated by the community. A printer in a neighboring town donated the programs. The local firemen had donated the seating. Restaurants and business people chipped in on all the items that gave us a glimpse into a world that had been created by a beautiful, bubbly 10-year-old girl. A short life, only 10 years. Maya Angelou said, "Sometimes the people who we've known for only a short amount of time have a bigger impact on us than those we've known forever." Legacy isn't dependent on how long we live or how much we have. It's about making an impact that will last long after we die. It's about who we are while we're here. It's about the way we make people feel, the way we will be remembered. Knowing what you want your legacy to be will influence the choices you make today, guiding you to live the way you want to be remembered. It will help you focus on what you truly value, on the things that are most important to you. And knowing what you want your legacy to be will help you to make better use of your time and resources now. So where do you start? Right here with this question. In my ideal death, I am a person who what?
Alors on chante, on danse, on fait la fête comme au ciel.
Makes me want to put on a maxi skirt and a duct tape bow. What an absolutely beautiful story. Thank you so much to the family of this little girl who let us share her story. What an inspiration she is. May she continue to inspire for a very, very long time. So, you see, our days are numbered. We simply do not know how many there will be. I said earlier that time can be an insulator, especially when we are living a life that is far removed from the original plan, a plan that was intended to bring us joy and to bring good into this world. The vagaries of life have a way of numbing us to our purpose. There are people, though, for whom something sudden snaps them back. For some, it could be an accident or a sudden illness, the death of someone they love. In dramatic circumstances, even like the ones we've seen in the last few months, it could be war. Think of all of those Ukrainian heroes who, in the face of the loss of their country, have chosen to live lives of courage, taking up arms to defend it, even at the risk of losing their own lives. Let me tell you something. I don't know if I'm that courageous, but I sure hope I would be. I don't know much about Volodymyr Zelensky, but I do know that he became famous in the 2000s as a comedian, an actor, a contestant on Ukraine's Dancing with the Stars. That's a far cry from the defiant, proud, courageous statesman that we've been seeing. Whatever character traits he was born with, whatever skills he developed throughout his career, when in the face of a crisis, Zelensky has forged himself a legacy. He has become a real-life hero. He has chosen to leave a legacy of courage. When he decided to stay and fight, he chose his legacy, and he will be remembered for that. Let me tell you something. When push comes to shove, it might be too late to start worrying about your legacy. And that's why I want you to start now. I want you to start thinking now about what people are going to say after you're gone, because the decisions you make today, about how you use your time, your talent, and your treasure, but especially your time, those decisions are already writing the story of your legacy for you. So, let's imagine that you're seated in the corner booth with the guy who gave you all those gold coins to begin with. Notice, I am not painting a grand scene of heaven with scary, enormous God and pearly gates and angels and a big book with all of your errors written on it that you have to explain. No. Today, heaven is an airport coffee shop, and the person who gave you your talents and your treasure is asking you what you did with them. It's an intimate conversation, and the person puts you at ease right away, all the while maintaining the mystique of someone who knows everything. He is a very good listener. I like to imagine that I would play with my hot chai, with whipped cream, thank you very much, for a long while, not sure about where to start. What did I do with the gold coins? Probably not enough would be my answer. I probably could have done more. Yeah, if you've ever seen Schindler's List, you understand. Because when it comes down to it, there is always more we could have done. But I like to think that my coffee date would redirect the conversation. That isn't what I asked you, he would say. I want to know what you did with what I gave you. And honestly, if I really let myself imagine the situation, a lot of the things that seem so important to me today, the things like my desire to be known and loved and my irritations with my children, my endlessly creative projects that never go anywhere but occupy hours and hours and hours of my life, those things seem to be quite a bit less important than they do now. I loved my kids, would probably be the first thing I would say. I raised them as well as I could, and I sang whenever I could, because I know you like it when I sing. It becomes easier the more I think about it, especially as I think about those little threads of sparkle that I had managed to ease out of the jumble of memories. I wrote like Alexander Hamilton, like I was running out of time. I wrote about big ideas, and sometimes I even got other people thinking about big ideas too. And I made a point of living frugally so that our money could be used for more important things. I woke up early to make the most of every day. Would this be enough to satisfy my companion? He doesn't say anything for a while, so I start to get nervous. You know what I saw? He interrupts the silence, to which I go back to playing with my chai. No, but I suppose you're going to tell me, I respond. I saw you when you and the boys were running late that one time, and you went all the way back home to get your youngest teddy bear because he said he needed it. But I was so nasty about that, I can argue, because I was. But you did it, he says back. Every time you put your plan and your schedule on the back burner to help someone else, I saw it. Those moments of invested time are more precious than anything else you might have done. Yeah, I'm just imagining this conversation, but even in this imagined conversation, I realize that I'm not very good about how I invest my time. You know that I don't like to give advice. I like to give ideas, thought experiments, homework, but advice is something I like to steer clear of. But given the direction my little imagined heaven airport coffee shop fantasy thing took me, there is one piece of advice that I'm going to give you right now. And I'm probably going to regret it the moment it comes out of my mouth, because if I say it, then I have to hold myself accountable to it. As a matter of fact, perhaps it's better that I not give this advice. So hold on, I'm going to go wake up the philosopher princess for a second. Put down your telephone. Everybody be quiet for a second. We need to make sure she falls back asleep. Okay, I think we're good. All right, well, that was abrupt. I think what the philosopher princess meant is that were we to consider how we use our time as critical, a precious, sparkling part of our legacy, we would do well to carve out more time when we aren't plugged in, when we aren't on our telephones, on our tablets, watching television or movies, or even listening to podcasts. You see, if the time we spend on our immediate relationships, the ones with the people actually physically around us, if that is something that is truly important to us, then we need to start acting like it. The philosopher princess actually considers this unplugging and turning our attention to others as a virtue, and it's one that she likes to call availability. Availability, putting our time and our attention at the disposal of the people we love, also known as put down your damn phone. I'm not saying that I have this figured out, obviously, because I don't, but it is something that I've had on my mind for a long time. So much so that I made it one of my New Year's resolutions: set aside more unplugged hours of the day. Part of our legacy at the end of our lives is going to be measured in how we used our time. Let's make sure, like really, really sure, that we're using our time in a way that builds the life we want to be remembered for.
Elle me fait bondir et vibrer, crier. Elle me donne envie de chanter, danser. Elle pousse à agir, donner, partager. Et tout simplement de sourire, aimer.
The very best legacy we can leave is to have lived according to the original plan for our lives. Most of us will never leave that legacy. Most of us will not have a legacy of Maxiskirts and Duct-Tape bow ties. The second best legacy that we can leave is to have decided one day, whether in the face of crisis or because we are tired of living an insulated and numb life, that we would start investing what we were given, choosing to make this world a better place by giving of who we are and the time, talent, and treasure that we have. We can decide at any point in our life to redraw our trajectory. It is never too late to start doing things differently, to invest our time differently. It is never too late to dust off our treasures, to start pulling silvery threads out of the jumble of our past and to start examining them. I believe that you are here for a purpose, and no matter how much time you have left, whether it can be counted in hours or in decades, I believe that you can be a hero for the rest of your story. So, what do you want your loved ones to say about you when you are inevitably, one day, going to leave them for that fancy airport coffee shop in the sky? What do you want them to be able to say that you did with your treasures? Every single minute counts towards your legacy. Do not waste it. Please check out the show notes for links to Laela's work, as well as a link to that song that she talked about. I am so eager to hear how you are going to start investing your time. So you can reach out to me on social media, on Instagram. I am at Lilyfields Challenge. That's Lily. On Facebook as Lily Fields, or you can even reach me by email. That's lily@lilyfieldschallenge.com. I want to give a great big thank you to Jonathan Moulin and Seven Production in Mulhouse, France for the use of the song La Joie as the intro and outro to our show. Also, thank you to the very talented Mathieu Kugler who sang it, and to Claude Ekwe who wrote it. Well, this is your fairy godmother signing off. I just want to remind you, it is never too late to start singing with your feet.